afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. Today's topic, the Americans, and why I actually think they're quite fine from a design perspective anyways. And while they might need a few things, they mostly need maybe a few nerfs here and there. And while they are getting a very minute few here, they're also getting buffs. So, the Americans, overall, I mean, you sort of compare them, and stop sending me random invites, people out of nowhere, by the way. I really dislike that one. I absolutely dislike it. Anyways, on to the actual topic at hand, which is the Americans. And, you know, again, people say, oh, you should be talking about the Americans. They're a terrible faction. Not from a design perspective. I mean, they're very straight up aggressive faction that actually has the things that make it work like an aggressive faction. They got strong standard infantry, they have very rapid tech up, and in fact, in this case, they even rewarded with more offensive infantry as they take up. So in that regard, you know, they don't even lose any momentum from taking up compared to any other faction, which makes them, again, very well suited for aggressive play, more so than the Oberkommando West, more so than the Soviets, and certainly more so than the Wehrmacht or the Brits. They're just sort of very offensively minded. Weapon racks with BARs, which are probably some of the best weapons in the game when you can get double of them. In fact, they can do a ton of damage with double BARs. In particular, up close, they can do insane amounts of damage then. And of course, they can also upgrade all the officers with it. They have pretty much, you know, high utility in each of the units. Grenades, smoke, anti-tank rifle grenades, though they're switching the smoke go to the rear echelons. With suppressive fire there, which by the way is going to get better now they're nerfing or decreasing the penalty you have for using it, by the way. You get the amazing 50 caliber, the insane USF mortar, Shermans which can self-repair for high explosive rounds, unpiercing rounds, and deliver smoke. Jacksons with HVAP rounds and still doing more damage than most other tank destroyers are now about to get tougher on top of that. I mean, good lord. The Scott, which is pretty decent, the pack cartridge, which is amazing, but it's get outshone by the mortar. The anti-tank gun barrel, which has, I think, roughly twice the rate of 5 other anti-tankers, almost the same level of penetration. Right, the USF have it golden. It is probably the easiest faction to play in the game. If anything, that might be the USF's biggest, in quotation marks, flaw. It's so easy that most people just, you know, can play along with it, think they're pattern, and then when they actually encounter problems, rather than just assume, well, maybe I need to up my style of play, they just assume it's a flaw with the faction and they're not just winning, but they can just pretty much steamroll most things. I mean, I would really describe the USF as the easiest to play faction. I mean, how I was able to recently beat a roughly top 100 Oberkommando West player while I was basically half awake. I was actually trying to play 2 versus 2s, misclicked, and, well, I was playing a 1 versus 1, completely unprepared for it, and I still won. I mean, that's basically how easy the USF is to play. So, I mean, either we have to assume 1, which is the USF is really easy to play, or we have to assume B, that I'm somehow a prodigy with the USF. You know, I'm pretty much the Belisarius, the Alexander the Great of USF players, and some are just able to do what no one else can do. Or, you know, again, the USF is just easy to play, and other people apparently just getting really lazy with it. I mean, how we see that with the Brits. I mean, you can't actually count a Brit rank on the sort of roughly same level as the other ranks, because the Brits, in a sense, also pretty easy to play if you sort of cheese them out. To an extent, I think that's sort of the case of this USF as well. It's just to an extent you can get carried very, very far, but just the sheer raw power that most people actually neglect their abilities, which are also pretty potent, like the armor-piercing rounds. You'll notice that so many American players will actually never ever use them. Even against the King Tiger, they will never ever use the armor-piercing rounds, the HVAP rounds, so not try to time it correctly, because, you know, they can always do insane amounts of damage to most German armor. So it definitely feels like, I mean, if we're going to really talk about flaws, the flaws is the USF is simply so easy to play, you're lulled into a false sense of security with them, to an extent there. I mean, if you know what you're doing, I mean, even the anti-aircraft tactic film is a pretty good counter versus the Lukes, getting a few bazookas there, and you can actually reasonably well lock it down. I mean, the USF just has so many paths you can take, so many potential roads, and the doctrines in many cases also reasonably good. I mean, again, I'm going to stick to my assertion that the USF is in fact a really easy faction to play in comparison to most others. In particular, just decide to cheese, and they can be really, really difficult to deal with. So, I mean, if anything, the USF will probably need some nerfs. I mean, again, my prime target probably looking at the BARs of the rifle, because they are really strong. Absurdly strong at times. You get a lieutenant, for example, up with the double BARs, he can just take on so much on his own, it's not even funny. So I'd probably look into the nerf in that, but also, again, the overall bigger issue is just, you know, the Axis factions just don't have any sort of serious counterplay except for the Oberkommando West. They hit the Lukes out, and there's a lot of false countries. They may be able to challenge them if the Americans don't hard counter with the BARs and bazookas. and even that might, you know, be a bit so-so. But the Wehrmacht, on the other hand, still lacks that, you know, late game stuff to really fit in the Americans to make up for the Americans' amazing early game. So, I mean, when it comes to people, again, I always see them complaining about the Americans. I'm like, you know, get good, people. Get good. Again, if I can beat a top 100-ish Oberkommando West player half awake, then you sure as hell can do it while being fully awake. I mean, again, I really do rate the USF as the easiest faction to play in the game at the moment. So if you're not somehow able to just rack out a lot of wins, you're doing something most likely rather wrong, in my opinion. I mean, that's just pretty much as how I perceive the situation there with the USF. Feel free to disagree with me, agree with me, you know, whatever. But I just don't see it any other way. I mean, again, it is just the easiest. You have the most options in many cases. You have amazing options like Supervise, On Me, Smoke everywhere compared to any other faction. BARs, which again are completely insane for a light machine gun, and you can get 2 of them in your rifle squad. I mean, they nerfed the German grenadiers to having 1 light machine gun, that you're allowing double BARs and squad that can also throw down smoke and grenades easily. Jeez. And although they're taking the smoke away, I mean, they're still going to be pretty damn potent. So, I mean, I just don't really see the USF being as weak as some people say they are, even remotely. And I think it sort of feels more like a reflection of their own skills than if they're sort of so sincerely complaining all the time about the USF. Again, it's that, you know, whole, they are so easy to play, you get lulled into a false sense of security with them, so when you actually encounter any issues, rather than just, you know, reconsider your tactics and strategy, you just begin complaining that the USF is not good enough, despite, again, having an absurd plethora of abilities and being one of the most offensively minded factions that support it more than anything, because it hands you free units when you tag up. I mean, that is huge. I mean, massive. Imagine if the Wehrmacht actually got some free stuff as it tagged up. That would actually also, in a way, help it out. It would help out any faction if it got free stuff as it tagged up, because in short, it did not lose momentum for taking up. And that would, you know, for example, massive for the Wehrmacht, which has the most tiers, but here we have the Americans from the fewest tiers, because, you know, I basically got this, then you basically have this tier 1, and then tier 2 again. Very few tiers that then further reward you for taking up with units. Just astounding. It is in many ways, again, a really tightly and cleverly designed faction compared to the Wehrmacht or the Oberkommando West or the Brits. I mean, compared to this, it's a masterpiece, and certainly it's one of the most sort of just biggest questions I ever have. How could they, at the same time as design the Americans, design the Oberkommando West like they just, on a design level, completely apart? But one is a complete and utter mess, the other one is just a shining machine that knows what it wants to do. Again, they're both designed as aggressive factions, but one is clearly functioning towards being an aggressive faction, the other one is just a mess. So there are a lot of things that to consider when it comes to the Americans, but them being weak is definitely not one of them. I mean, again, use their abilities. That's really just my number one, you know, suggestion. Also, remember to flank, but use their abilities. There's so many abilities most people never ever use, and they just give the Americans so many benefits. I mean, using your Sherman smoke screen, for example, you just completely lock out your opponent's anti-tanks and largely charge straight ahead. As an example, riflemen with smoke, soon re-escalants with smoke, mortars with smoke. You have so much smoke to just negate so much of your opponent's firepower. It's crazy. And of course, your riflemen themselves can just carry around so much firepower they're practically orbitals done on their own. At least if they get up close, in which case they will be able to outdo them, particularly with double BARs. So I definitely think they are in very much as fine a faction as can get, in need of some nursery. And then again, I'd still probably look to the BARs and the rifle a bit there, just slightly tune it down, at least force them to only wield 1 BAR, or at least tune down the BAR, then severely on the move, so it's less of an assault rifle, which the BAR, by the way, was not. But again, beyond that, very straightforward faction, aggressive faction who know how to play aggressively and know how to flank, I mean, and use the abilities. You will generally do well with the Americans. You could do insanely well with the Americans. So there you go. Again, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people upset at me not saying, you know, well, the Americans are as broken as something else. No, they're not. I mean, again, any flaws they might have isn't just how well designed they are compared to the other factions, and in fact seemingly have given in to so many complaints, which is sort of further just smoothed up any rough edges they might have had compared to other factions that have been left behind, like say the Wehrmacht or the Oberkommando West or the Brits. I mean, there's just, you know, so much work that could have been done there, but they just keep focusing on the USF and they just keep giving them more, when other factions probably in desperately need of better tools. So that might be sort of their biggest sin right now, that is they're so overtuned, yet people still demand more. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got some ideas from it, learned something from it. If you did, you know, subscribe, like, share, and comment on it. And of course, a big thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Without this episode was certainly impossible. So thank you all, and see you all tomorrow or another day for another video about something Communist 2 related. Cheers.